Hello everyone, it is I, Jesse, aka Survival Punk, aka the Wide Guard, aka, oh no, it's that guy. And today, we have another patch to suffer through together. Let's see what newfound hell behavior has for us, shall we? I can't believe I'm saying this, but guys, I think they did a good job. Now, before I get to the meat and potatoes of this video, there are a couple of things I would like to bring attention to. First off, we just got announced that they're adding our boy Chucky to 2v8s, which is actually really cool, especially when you take into consideration that this is a killer that we didn't expect to see in 2v8 for a very long time. Mind you, he is the only killer they will be adding to 2v8 this time around, but considering how annoying it must have been to figure out how to put Chucky into 2v8 in a balanced fashion, we can let them slide on this one. Second thing I would like to bring to our attention, however, is rather interesting. I'm sure a lot of you noticed during the PTB when you played it for yourselves that Pinhead, ridiculously enough, made a weird return. In fact, all his perks had the original names and emblems. Now, this is interesting and exciting, because regardless of whether or not it was a mistake from the devs, and it quite honestly probably was, is this a hint at a potential Pinhead return to DBD? In which case, that is an amazing thing, and that is a good sign for the future of the game, especially off the back of losing Myers. The return of another beloved killer that we unfortunately lost last year is a good step forward for Behavior to take if they can manage to figure out that pesky paperwork. Don't get too excited though, because it's very possible this was 100% a accident. But I don't think so. Whether it's an accident or not, whether they purposely did it or not, I think this might be a good sign, or at the very least, I am very hopeful. Now, with those two things out of the way, we can begin to talk about the real reason you clicked into this video. And that, of course, is my thoughts on patch 9.4. First off, we will talk about the two new survivors, as well as two familiar faces, that of Steve and Nancy, that had a bit of a glow up this chapter. Yep, that's right. They updated the visual appearance of the Steve Harrington model, as well as the Nancy Wheeler model. And, of course, as much as I will miss some of those rather interesting faces Nancy would make, I would have to say that this is quite the step up for the appearance of the character, and quite the upgrade overall.
Good job!
Also, don't worry, Steve Harrington fans. I double dog, triple dog checked it. Steve Gold is alive and well in the game. Fly high, my loud, obnoxious birdies. Fly high. Moving on, Dustin Henderson and 11 are the two new survivors from the Stranger Things franchise getting added to the game. Now, I'm not a big Stranger Things fan, or at the very least, I didn't watch much past season 2. I do think Stranger Things is an interesting IP, and I'm sure Stranger Things fans that happen to play Dead by Daylight are very excited for this, especially in the case of Dustin, considering that this is a reunion, at least in Dead by Daylight terms, for Dustin and Steve Bean Boys. Don't rest on your laurels quite yet, because the Behaviour Stranger Things fan service doesn't quite end there. You see, there are technically 2 other characters officially added to the game. I am, of course, referring to fan favorite characters Robin Buckley, dressed in her Scoops Ahoy business uniform, and Eddie Munson and his classic jean vest jacket. Now, as character models go, Behaviour really went all out here. Sure, Steve still looks like Steve, just with a slight facelift, but the rest of the characters got done pretty darn well. Nancy actually looks like the actress this time around, resting bitch face at all. Dustin is 1-to-1 to the actor from the show, although the character's model does feel a wee bit taller than the real-life actor's real height of 5'5". Additionally, both Robin and Eleven look pretty close to their on-screen counterparts. The only problem I personally have is I do feel like they did Eddie a little dirty, and they might need to clean him up a little bit before live. I mean, look how thick he is for no good reason. He looks less like Eddie from Stranger Things, and more like Cousin Eddie from the Vacation movies, wearing an Eddie from Stranger Things Halloween costume. Seriously, where is Eddie, and who is this 40-year-old man cosplaying as him? That being said, overall, the characters look and feel just like the characters from the show, and that's commendable considering, well, how far Behaviour has gone in terms of representing the way characters look in their original IPs. Let's move on to the perks, starting with Dustin's. The first perk is Bada Boom. After completing 20% worth of repairs, press the ability button next to a window to trap it for 40, 50, or 60 seconds depending on perk level. The trap triggers when the killer performs a vault on the window and will suffer a 50% hindered for 6 seconds. Honestly, this is hilarious considering one of my primary wishes in my last video for changes I would love to see in Dead by Daylight was less of this shit. But here we are. Take a look at this JC Glitchmaster clip to get a good idea of exactly how ridiculous this can be.
At that point, you might as well just drop chase. Was that with Lithe or without? Literally made distance a literal opposite corner of the map, by the way. With Bamboozle and a 20% vault speed increase.
Maybe creating a window trap perk twice as good as Chemical Trap that can turn already safe window loops into guaranteed escape plans was a bad idea. Disgusting! This is ridiculous. Now, you're probably not gonna see this a whole lot from solo players, but 4-mans, especially bully squads, will abuse this, and this will be very annoying. Additionally, 50% for 6 seconds is ridiculous. That means that if you decide to dedicate to a shack loop, and just before you hit them at the window, a friend can run up, put Bada Boom on the window, and run off, and you have no choice but to break the loop or activate the bomb. Either way, a potential down just got to run away because they and/or an ally was able to place this trap. Of course, with no counterplay, and at no fault to the killer whatsoever. Perks like this are annoying, especially since they don't even add anything interesting to the game. It's just an arbitrary, annoying trap that the killer has to either ignore or deal with. Change of plan. You start with 2 tokens. While inside a locker and holding a non-event toolbox, press the ability button. To spend 1 token, transforming your toolbox into a medkit. This medkit has 80, 90 to 100% of its charges and will be of the same rarity with add-ons of the same rarity as the toolbox. This means you can start with a fully decked out toolbox, rush a generator at the start of the game, and turn it into a medkit. And not only that, but later down the line, if you're in need of a medkit and you open a chest and find a toolbox, you can do it again. Alternatively, if you pick up a toolbox from a killed ally or that was dropped by an ally, you can do it again. Obviously, this perk is going to be really popular among solo players, but anybody with half a brain reading this knows that this is ridiculous. You're telling me that at the low cost of a single perk spot, I could start a trial with both of the strongest items in the game? That is crazy value.
I'd buy that for $1.
Teamwork full circuit. For each other survivor repairing a generator with you, the size of the good skill check zone is increased by 15, 20, or 25%. Additionally, while repairing with at least one other survivor, you repair 5% faster. Keep this perk in mind, we're gonna come back to it. Next up, let's talk about 11 and her perks. Extrasensory perception. After crouching for 4 seconds, you see auras in an expanding radius up to 44 meters. Have elusive and oblivious. When you stop crouching, or after 11 seconds, this perk enters a 60, 50 to 40 second cooldown. This perk is kinda meh. I mean, the aura reading that expands is pretty useful, and it's nice that it makes you elusive during the use of the ability, but you can only get the effects while crouching, and the moment you stop crouching, you lose them, which is good because otherwise this wouldn't be a very well balanced perk. Unfortunately, this perk kind of died at conception due to the fact that for it to be any good, you would need the effects to linger longer, but if they did, then it would be broken because on-demand elusive is fucking ridiculous. Although the oblivious status effect does help with the balancing factor as well. I don't know. This one's kind of an enigma to me. We see you. When the killer reveals your aura, gain 1 token. When you have 4 tokens, spend all your tokens to reveal the killer's aura to you and your allies for 10, 12.5, and 15 seconds. This perk has a 10-second cooldown. Now, the 10-second cooldown part at the end is kind of redundant because the killer needs to reveal you like 4 times for you to have enough tokens for the perk to activate anyways. But I digress. This is actually a pretty well-balanced perk. I can see it being very useful, and it's not too broken, because it might sound like it's ridiculously broken at first until you realize the 4 tokens get spent all at once, so you gotta build them back up again. The only weird thing I have to say about it is 12.5 in the middle is kind of an awkward number, but otherwise, no. A+. This was a good survivor perk. And finally, teamwork, soft spoken. For each other survivor repairing a generator with you, the range at which generator repair noise is heard is reduced. by 15, 20, and 25%. Now, although this does sound like a very annoying perk to deal with, it doesn't sound like a very strong perk. And, well, it isn't. But give me a moment to read the second half of this perk, and you'll see what I'm getting at. While repairing with at least one other survivor, you repair 5% faster. Now, unless you have the memory of a literal bumblebee, you will remember me asking you to keep full circuit in mind. You see, both these teamwork perks have a 5% repair speed bonus. That stacks. So if you have both perks, that means that as long as one other ally is on the generator with you, forget the actual effects of the perks. They're fucking worthless. That's 10% additional repair speed on top of the repair speed bonus you get having another person on the generator. And keep this in mind. If they have the perks as well, that's a total of 20% additional generator speed. Like, did anybody think this through? Take into account change of plan? And you got the building blocks for a nasty team-wide Gen Rush build.
Yo, killing me with this.
Again, don't get me wrong, Teamwork Full Circuit and Teamwork Soft Spoken are really meh perks, to say the least, when on their own. But when combined and then comboed with Change of Plan, an actual broken perk, by the way, this is a ridiculous combo, and I see this being a problem in the future. Like, think about it, a coordinated 4-man Swith comboing all 3 of these perks together so that they can not only rush the generators at the start with toolboxes, but turn those toolboxes into medkits along with any other toolboxes they find in the trial. And not only that, but they got an additional 10% repair speed per survivor, assuming they are working together and teaming up on the generators. So as long as there's someone distracting the killer, you can have up to 30% additional repair speed on repairing a generator, in addition to the repair speed bonus you get from having 3 survivors on it in the first place. Now, obviously, the most broken part of that combo, and the primary reason I'm even worried about this combo in the first place, is Change of Plan. I'll circle back to it. This is a problematic perk, guys. Really bad. Because, I'll tell you what, even if a 4-man squad decides against taking Full Circuit and Soft Spoken, it doesn't matter. Because they're probably going to all take Change of Plan, and that on its own is ridiculous. Why? Because they can take a Shroud of Separation, all take a commodious toolbox, rush the early gens, and then convert those toolboxes into medkits. All of which with absolutely no counterplay possible on part of the killer, especially after the neutering of Franklin's demise. That is absolutely broken. But now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, let's talk about Vecna from Stranger Things.
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god! What is that?
Now, once again, I'm not a big Stranger Things fan, and I haven't watched past season 2. In fact, any information I really do know about the Stranger Things series is information that I have absorbed through social media and memes. So I can't exactly speak to the authenticity of how well Vecna has been adapted to the game as a killer. What I can say, however, is his power is very interesting and novel, and that he is very visually appealing as a killer. I must also really say, I do enjoy the skin he will be getting on release. Now, I have no idea what context this has for the show itself, but I do enjoy the fact that it makes him look like a crazy cokehead. I will say, however, I'm not a fan of his M1 animation, which looks less like a tentacle attack and more like a angry mutated Italian man trying to force feed people sausage. Moving on, Vecna's M2 is Vine Attack. Press and hold the power button to charge a vine attack. When charged, press the attack button to activate it, creating a small area of effect on the ground. Any survivor caught within the area of the vine attack grants Vecna a world token. When Vecna has gathered enough World Breaker tokens, World Breaker activates and the World Breaker timer begins. While World Breaker is active, both the vine attacks and his undergate attack, we will get into that later, do damage to survivors instead of adding World Breaker tokens. Now, when I first read about this M2, I was extremely underwhelmed. Reason being, when I read it, it sounded an awful lot like a line attack across the ground, similar to Pyramid Head. And I thought to myself, why would I want a Pyramid Head M2 with extra steps? Fortunately, that is not the case. As you can see, Vecna's M2 works an awful lot like a Karthus Q, if you're familiar with League of Legends. Or, in Dead by Daylight terms, it's a lot like a repurposed version of Nurse's Teleport, just converted into a M2 ranged attack. Obviously, that changes things a lot, and definitely warrants the fact he needs to build up World Breaker tokens in order to damage survivors with this ability. The second half of his power is the Upside Down and the Undergate. The killer can enter the Upside Down to navigate the map quickly by tapping the ability button. While in the Upside Down, the killer can activate an Undergate attack to return to the map, creating a large area of effect on the ground. Survivors caught in its radius gain 2 World Breaker tokens. Although you enter the ground and travel along the ground, it works an awful lot like the Krisu's Headlong Flight, with the primary difference being that you can not only do it indefinitely, but you can do it through window and pallet vaults. The Undergate attack, however, is pretty underwhelming. It's very easy to dodge, primarily due to its long wind-up time, giving survivors more than enough time to run out of its radius if they react appropriately. And odds are pretty good they are going to react appropriately, given the fact that they knew you were coming from a mile away. When Vecna travels around in the Upside Down, it is very loud. I mean very loud. Across the map loud, damn near. When Vecna enters World Breaker mode and gains the ability to damage survivors with his Vine attack and his Undergate attack, a total of 4 grandfather clocks are activated. You see, when Vecna enters World Breaker mode, he's only in that mode for a predetermined amount of time. And survivors can use these grandfather clocks to speed up the mode, kicking them out of it earlier. Now, this does sound like unfair counterplay, but it isn't. The survivors can only speed up the mode by roughly 75%. The last 25% is guaranteed to Vecna, meaning no matter how well coordinated the survivors are or how aggressive they are against World Breaker mode, Vecna is guaranteed to get some kind of reward for playing good and using his power well. Or in short, his counterplay is warranted due to how strong he is and is implemented very well, giving survivors pushback against his power without outright denying Vecna his power arbitrarily. And as if I couldn't love this killer power enough, Behaviour actually gives us a visual indication of when Worldbreaker is up and how long you have it. I really love this killer power. Top to bottom, it was well done, it was mostly original, and very novel in its implementation. And as I said in my New Year's resolution video, the game has been lately extremely lacking in original killer powers. Additionally, the built-in counterplay not only feels well implemented, but unlike the last two killers added to the game with built-in counterplay, the counterplay actually feels warranted this time around. Reason being, Vecna is strong. He fucks. He fucks hard. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying he's stronger than Blight and Nurse like some people have been jumping the gun and claiming on social media, but, and I mean this in a good way, he's pretty damn close. Assuming there is no changes after the PTB and he's added to the game as is live, he is easily the third strongest killer in the game, by far, while managing to be, in my opinion, very fair to go up against, unlike the other two top killers. Now, I know there's a lot of people that might disagree with me on that one, mostly due to the many Nurse comparisons he's been getting, but unlike Nurse, he actually has to earn the anti-loop. Remember, assuming you didn't nail a survivor with the Undergate, which is extremely difficult and rightfully so, you have to hit a survivor 2 times with the Vine attack before you can do any damage to survivors. So, in the same amount of time it would take Vecna to down a survivor, a Nurse might already have them on a hook. And that's not even taking into consideration the utility a Nurse has with her teleportation, primarily in the form of her ability to teleport through obstacles, which not only means she can teleport past walls, but also means she can teleport through floors and up ceilings, making her way stronger on maps with multiple levels. Additionally, although the Upside Down gives Vecna a hilarious level of map traversal, it is balanced and kept in check by a very lengthy cooldown. So comparing his map pressure and map mobility to killers like Blight is just unfair and unfounded. Now, my final example of why Vecna is nowhere near as strong as Nurse or Blight is the fact that his M2, unlike Nurse and Blight, is completely unusable when in the vicinity of hooked survivors. Now, I don't know if I'm personally a fan of this, due to the fact that I don't think you as a killer should be punished if survivors decide to play around hooked survivors and or play super altruistic. On the other hand, I do feel as though killers of the power level of Nurse and Blight should have some restrictions here or there, so it kind of just comes out in the wash for me. Personally, I would take this away and apply it to either Nurse or Blight, preferably both. But that just might be my Nurse Blight hate boner talking, so just ignore me. Now, there's a lot to talk about here. His kit is very overloaded, but thankfully I'm on to the last thing. You see, Vecna has a mini Mori. If you get max Worldbreaker tokens on a survivor and have hooked them twice, the next time you hit them with your Vine attack and or your Undergate attack will make them float in the air, allowing you to give them a quick mini Mori. All in all, in terms of killer design, I gotta give Behaviour a solid A+. They manage to come up with an original killer power that was really strong, but doesn't feel broken or unfair. And not only that, but they managed to figure out a form of counterplay for the survivors that is fair, rewarding, and warranted, without completely fucking over Vecna and making him unplayable. More of this behavior, more of this. Seriously, take whichever members of your team who worked on Vecna, throw them in a room, and don't let them out until they come up with an original killer with an original power just as good, if not better than this. Chef's kiss. Now, moving on to Vecna's perks, we got Turn Back the Clock. After hooking a survivor for the next 40 to 50 to 60 seconds, depending on level, you can press ability button 1 to make a target generator within 20 meters explode, and then that target generator loses 10% progress and starts regressing. Now, this is the type of perk that hurts me the most because it is so close to being a really good perk. This is essentially eruption for non-mobility killers. That is really good until you realize certain specific things. Problem number 1, it's only 20 meters. So, unless you're in the hyper-specific situation in which a survivor or several survivors are on a generator that's about to pop and you can't stop them, you might as well just walk up, bully them off the generator, and kick it. Problem number 2, it's only 10%. That's extremely low. To put it into perspective, every second a survivor spends on a generator is roughly 1% of progress on that generator. Meaning, if you use this to regress a generator, you only set them back roughly 10 seconds at best. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Jesse, you've already compared this to eruption, and eruption has a very low percentage. Isn't that warranted or fair, or at least a precedent? To which I would say, I understand where you're coming from, but you're 100% wrong. You see, eruption's low percentage is warranted primarily due to the fact that eruption can affect multiple generators at once, whereas Turn Back the Clock can only affect one generator per hooked survivor. And that's not even the worst part of the perk. Watch this Ots Darva clip real quick.
That's a great question. Right, so yeah, I look at the gen that's in 20 meters. How do I use this perk? Oh, there you go. I need to have direct line of sight. Okay. So
yep, that's right. Not only is it 20 meters, not only is it a measly 10% of progress, but you can't even do it through walls. You need direct line of sight. This perk went from A tier, possibly even S tier, to B tier at best due to its 20 meters and 10% progress reduction, just to end up plummeting into the depths of shit tier because you need direct line of sight, not only making it extremely hard to use due to walls and hills, but making it absolutely worthless on indoor maps, meaning this perk is a gamble of whether or not you can even use it in the first place. There are 3 types of dogshit perks Behaviour absolutely loves to add to this game, and unfortunately, these 3 types of perks make up 90% of the perks added to the game. These are perks that are hyper-specific to killers, perks that are hyper-specific to builds, and finally, perks that are neutered out the gate. And that's what this is, a perk that was well designed, but Behaviour was so afraid of it being OP or broken, they purposefully made it bad in both stats and function. What Behaviour needs to do if they want this perk to actually be decent and usable is A, bump the range up by 5 or 10 meters. B, add an additional 5% to its regression. And C, they need to let you use it through walls. And once again, I'm not saying do one of these things. I'm not saying do some of these things. They need to do all 3 of these things. Only then will this even be a usable perk. Yes, this would make the perk high A tier, sure, but that's what you gotta do if you want mobility killers to use this over eruption, let alone M1 killers and non-mobility killers to use this at all. Hex Hive Mind. The first time you hook any survivor, a doll totem becomes a hex totem. Generators are highlighted. The intensity of the generator auras reveals their repair progress. When 1 generator remains, all remaining generators explode, depending on level, 6, 8, or 10% progress, and these generators start to regress. After which point, the hex becomes dull. Now, this perk is actually kind of mid, but in a good way. I'll take a decent middle-of-the-road perk over a niche and or dogshit perk any day. Which, let's face it, the vast majority of new killer perks are either hyper niche or absolute dogshit. This perk, put simply, is essentially the Springtrap add-on, Bonnie's Guitar Strings, or the Aura Reveal portion of Legion's Fuming Mixtape add-on, just in the form of a perk. I'll be honest though, I'm not sure how I feel about it being a hex totem, but at the same time, I can't see this working any other way. What I mean by this is, as a hex totem, why would I bring this over other hexes? It just doesn't feel strong enough. But, on the other hand, if this wasn't a hex totem, it'd arguably be too strong. So it's kind of just in a weird place for me. Additionally, the 6, 8 to 10% regression is really, really good. Once again, I know I just said 10%'s fairly low, but considering that this affects 3 generators simultaneously, that's pretty useful, and that's in addition to the fact that this means that the last 3 generators immediately start regressing, giving the killer a nice little head start onto protecting his potential 3-gen, assuming he or she managed to set one up properly. The problem with this aspect of the perk, however, is, once again, it's a totem perk. So the chances of it even being up by the time the survivors only have 1 gen left to finish, kinda slim to none. What I would personally do to make this perk a little bit more balanced and usable is keep it almost exactly as is, except with the caveat that the generator regression explosion that occurs when there's 1 generator remaining occur regardless of if the hex is up or not. That way, you're kinda guaranteed to get some value out of this, even if they remove the hex very early, which is the primary issue with most hex perks. They're too strong, usually, to be anything but a hex perk, but 9 times out of 10, you get little to nothing out of them because, well, it's a hex perk. So you're at the mercy of where the hex spawns in the first place. Let alone whether or not the survivor spawns next to the hex or they just luckily bumped into it on random. Finally, let's talk about one of the best new killer perks ever added to this game. I am referring to the killer perk Secret Project. When a totem is blessed or cleansed, block a random unblocked generator for 20, 25, or 30 seconds. Additionally, when 1 or more generators become blocked, you gain undetectable for 30 seconds. Not only did they finally add a perk to the game that interacts with blessed totems that isn't absolute dog shit, Looking at you, Shattered Hope. Looking at you. But this is the first perk in a long line of perks that is not only usable for killers and is strong, but it isn't super killer specific, nor is it super build specific. All you really need to make this perk work is simply one other perk and or add-on that blocks generators. That's it, and you can get full value out of this perk. For example, you can play Ghostface, take Thrilling Tremors as your only other perk that blocks generators, and still get full value out of this perk. And that's before even taking the driver's license add-on. This perk is insanely strong, especially when you take into account that arguably the strongest effects in the game are stealth effects. Although, be it simultaneously they're the weakest effects in the game, thanks to comms. Looking at you, Discord. Looking at you, Behavior. Looking at you, Remy. I digress. Moving on, I'm just sitting here thinking of all the wonderful perk combos and add-on combos you can do with this. The before-mentioned Thrilling Tremors driver's license. Or, better yet, you can play Plague, run this with Deadlock and Double Eerie add-on, and not only do you get Vile Purge every time they finish a generator, but now you're undetectable for 30 seconds on top of it. There's a really nasty build JC Glitchmaster came up with, where you utilize this perk, Thrilling Tremors, Deadman Switch, and Pain Resonance for a really nasty gen control stealth build, where basically every time you pick up a survivor, you gain undetectable, and after you hook that survivor, you can immediately go to the generator you know they're working on, thanks to Thrilling Tremors, and activate Deadman Switch by, of course, pressuring them off the generator. Plus, the added effect of forcing Deadman Switch activations with Pain Resonance, assuming there's a survivor on the generator when it pops, which is useful enough on its own, before you even take into account the 20% regression from Pain Resonance. Heck, I even managed to strip a Steve off a generator at the start of a game because I comboed it with Corrupt Intervention, one of the strongest perks in the game, made even stronger by the fact I could start the match with 30 seconds of undetectable. Nasty. All of which is 100% fair because this perk is only as strong as you are willing to invest perks and add-ons into. So yeah, sure, it's really strong if you dedicate your entire build to it, but that's fair. You dedicated your entire build to it. And keep in mind, if this is a perk combo that really annoys you and bothers you, all you really gotta do to counter it is, well, log on to Discord and invite a friend to play DBD.
Did you know that snow makes natural insulation for an outdoor stove?
Yes, I did.
Are you recording me say this right now?
Yes, I am.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah, you are.
It should be in your video booth.
No, I don't think it will.
And then jokes on me, it's in the video.
Yeah, probably. My biggest hope, my biggest wish coming in to live with this PTB is that they don't nerf this perk by arbitrarily putting a cooldown on the undetectable, because that would absolutely kill it, and it would do so unnecessarily. I know, Behavior, it's really scary when you give killers actually good perks, but come on, man. After last year, you gotta give us something. So now, this video, as you probably guessed, is coming to a conclusion. The only thing I would like to state is, well, my final wishes for what I would like to see changed from the PTB to live, which, surprisingly enough, is very little. Simply reduce the duration of Bada Boom to 2 or 3 seconds, make the gen regression effect of Hive Mind an automatic effect not tied to the hex totem itself, buff the ever-loving fuck out of Turn Back the Clock, and finally, please add some kind of restriction or stipulation to change of plan. Other than the 2 tokens, of course, because trust me, that's not enough. I would say you either A, need to add some kind of goal that you have to achieve before you can use the tokens, or B, limit its effects to toolboxes found during the trial. Preferably some combination of the 2, or better yet, scrap it entirely and go back to the drawing board. Cause I gotta tell you fellas, this ain't it. I can't stress this enough. Being able to have both a toolbox and a medkit in a game meta where Franklin's demise no longer exists is ridiculously busted, and whoever thought this was a good idea really needs a reality check. And while we're at it, how about fixing Eddie's Weird Al looking ass? He should not be this chopped, guys. Other than that, and I can't stress this enough, change nothing behavior. This is the closest you have been to a perfect update for the game in a really long time. Do not succumb to peer pressure and nerf Vecna. As strong as he is fair, balanced, and fun. And with that, I'm gonna end this video here, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like, follow, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell. Till next time, deuces!